Hi students, this video is on finding the main idea of something you're reading. Now this will be good for your book club activities and for sort of assessing whether or not you understood the text that you are reading. And it's a good exercise too to prepare you for the midterm and the final, because in your midterm and your final exam, you'll have to take our readings from this semester, analyze the main ideas of those readings, and tell whether or not the authors achieved that main idea or main point. Did they communicate successfully? So that's where we're starting, how to find the main idea. I'm going to download the PowerPoint here, but please know all that information is also on this page. And down at the bottom, there are a couple of videos. One is what is a main idea in case you want some other points of view. And two, what's important for us is main idea the same as bias. And so something to think about. An author's argument generally is what the author is trying to convince the audience of. The author gives evidence and analysis to prove that point. It is generally clear even when it is not explicit or totally clear. Bias, in contrast, is the point of view an author has on a subject that the author does not explain or provide evidence for. And so that's a very, very clear distinction. So watch these videos down here on bias. They're only, this one's 2 minutes, this one's almost 30 minutes. They're very, very short, but very nice, very clear. And then I'm going to take you back to the top, download our PowerPoint lecture, and go through it with you. All right, everyone. So here's our PowerPoint. It's on finding the main point or thesis. And it's good to know that everything you read has a point, whether the author makes it clear or not. So what will you learn in this lecture? This lecture is about finding an author's main point or thesis. I wonder why this is squiggly. Oh well. I think that's spelled correctly. Anyway, this lecture is about finding an author's main point or thesis. And again, you'll need this for your book club as well as the midterm and the final. So first, we have to understand what a main point is. And so that's very, very similar to what I was talking about for our essays. In our essays, we write a thesis, but in our readings, that thesis may or may not be explicit or clear. And so a nice way to talk about that in something that's not an academic essay is to call it a main point. But we can think about it as having the same points. For this class, an author's main point will have 3 identifiable parts, and you should recognize this from our thesis lecture: a topic, an argument, and an explanation. And the topic is what the essay is about. The argument is the claim the author makes or the side the author takes. And the explanation is the reason the author says they are correct. So that's our basic formula for a thesis if we were writing it. But we can also use this formula to write the main point of an essay we're reading, somebody else's work. It's not easy. Sometimes you'll be able to find an author's thesis in the text, pinpoint it, right? Circle it, highlight it, but sometimes you won't. Sometimes you have to infer the thesis or take what you have and sort of make an educated guess. Now, an author's main point or thesis states what the author is trying to convince us of, okay? It can be explicit, clearly stated, or implied. And you'll want to ask yourself, is what I'm reading, does it have a clearly stated main point or thesis, or is it implied? Sometimes you'll get a sign. So with an explicit thesis, an author might say, in this essay, I will prove to you that cats are great. Or in this essay, my goal is to prove that cats are better than dogs. I'm just kidding, dog people. All animals are great. But that's just an example. However, most of the time, especially with our readings, which all come from popular culture today, the author won't give you these obvious clues. You have to read the entire essay and then sort of take a look at your notes and understand what the author was trying to prove to you. All right. So nevertheless, even if you can't find it and highlight it and point at it, you must be able to articulate the essay's thesis or main point in your own words. And so you'll need to do this for every essay we read this semester. So let's talk about how to do that. Here's a step-by-step process to help you find the main point of an essay you're reading. The first step, as you probably already know, is you have to read the essay. And I also recommend annotating at the same time. So step 1, read and annotate the essay. A thesis covers or mentions all of an essay's arguments and conclusions. And you can't know the author's arguments until you've read the content, right? So you can't understand if a sentence is the entire point or a partial point until you've read the entire essay. Remember, to find the main point of an essay, you must read the entire essay. And again, that's because a thesis alludes to all of the essay's arguments and conclusions. Make sure the main point or thesis you identify covers all of the author's arguments. All right. Step 2, list the author's arguments. Now, an argument gives evidence and reasoning. So you might get a quote or fact or data or a graph or chart, and then you'll get an explanation of how that fact is important. That's evidence plus reasoning. So arguments are probably what you've already found as you've annotated, okay? You've probably identified them as you were annotating. But if you didn't annotate, sometimes arguments are mentioned in the topic sentence of each paragraph. Of course, in an academic essay they are, but not in every essay, okay? So that's only sometimes. And sometimes arguments are listed in section headings, but you'll notice in our class we don't have many essays with section headings. Step 3, combine the arguments into a thesis. Combine all the arguments. So you've got all these arguments in maybe your annotations or on a page. Combine all of them into 1 to 2 sentences, okay? So that might be a really, really long sentence, but you're sort of going to mush them together. And step 4, you're going to process what you found. So condense those arguments into 1 to 2 sentences, use your own words. Make sure you mention each argument, however briefly. You may find some of the arguments are repeated. That's okay. There's no need to mention the same argument twice in your main point. This is not the time to say whether you agree or disagree with the author. Right now, we're just trying to figure out what the author is trying to tell us, right? Process those arguments by condensing them. Check your end product by answering these questions. What is the author's topic? What is the author's argument? And what is the author's explanation or reason he, she, or they believes the argument is correct? Step 5 is to rewrite what you have, because you probably have a messy 2 sentences now. You're going to rewrite the results into your own words and clarify anything that is unclear. And you now have the main point of the essay. Step 5 has an optional section. This is where you check to see if the author has given such a thesis statement anywhere in the essay. It may be anywhere in the essay, first paragraph, last paragraph, or anywhere in between. But of course, if you've written it, if you've based your main point on the author's arguments, this is only optional. You don't have to point to it and say this is the author's main point in the essay. You've written it in your own words. And that's it for main point. Practice on the essays we read and have fun. Let me know if you have any questions.